Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to say, is it time to quit wargaming? So long and thanks for all the fish. So this week's talking point is not a late April Fool's, but it does ask when is the right time to throw in the towel. So of course I'm being slightly disingenuous here because I don't mean quitting wargaming entirely, but rather when is the right time to quit a project or a period. Now this is a subject that has come up before, indeed I did a video about it, I think it was a couple of years ago, but it's also a subject that regularly comes up in subscriber questions and you know, on several occasions since then I've had emails with people who've asked similar questions, so I decided it was worth covering again. Now I guess it must be something of a perennial question for any wargamer. When do you consider a project to be finished and how do you make the decision to quit and move on? And when I last discussed this, I think I was torn between being brutally rational about your collections and keeping absolutely everything just in case. It's certainly a difficult decision to make, and I imagine will depend on each individual person's space constraints, financial limitations, whether you're a Wargames butterfly or dedicated to a particular period. So I should start by saying that I'm not about to give up my hobby or the channel, but I have in the past sold some of my collection, only to regret the decision very shortly thereafter. In particular, I sold most of my 15mm World War II stuff to a friend because it'd been sitting around unused for a long time, and then within a year or two I found a different World War II rule set that really inspired me, and I really wish I hadn't sold the stuff. I mean, most of the stuff that I sold could have been rebased and found a second life on my games table. But you know, before I ask if selling collections is a good idea or not, it's worth asking why would you consider it in the first place? Now there are of course lots of reasons why you might end a particular period, and probably a similar number of reasons why you may decide not only to end the period but to sell everything that you've collected. It could be that you're halfway through a big project and the models or the manufacturer that you have used, dedicated, are no longer available, and you have compatibility issues or can't find alternatives. I mean, I'd like to think there would be some overlap with ranges from other manufacturers, but I guess for some niche periods there may only be one source of miniatures. I mean, that being said, everything can be found on eBay or bring and buy stores, so maybe don't write that project off quite so soon. Another reason for moving on is that you may have struggled to find anyone willing to play that niche period that got you so inspired in the first place. Of course, the simple answer to that is, you know, play some solo. If you've never tried it, I heartily recommend you give it a go. And probably the most common reason that wargamers might give up a period is that for many gamers, it's a little bit of there's a bit of butterfly in all of us. And there's always more periods, more figures ranges, new rules to tempt us away from our first love. You know, or maybe you just realise that the period you collected in 28mm looks so much better in 6mm, and you've decided to convert to the one true scale. You never know. So you've decided to give up on a period, but what do you do next? Now you could just put everything into storage, just in case. Just because you've drawn a line under a particular project doesn't mean you'll never play it again, maybe with a different set of rules. You know, I've been burned by seller's regret only to return to the same project years later, as I said, with a different set of rules. Now I've decided that I'm not doing that again, ever. And even if a painted collection goes into deep storage, it's better than selling it and regretting it later. You know, there is a caveat though. Any stuff for that project that hasn't been painted, and who doesn't have a lead mounting or two, should be sold and given away to make space or raise cash for the next project. But before you do put that army away, ask yourself if there are options that allow for the overlapping or recycling of part of that period. Terrain in particular can often be given a second life in another period. I mean, a hill is a hill after all, regardless of the century or indeed sometimes even the scale. It's an efficient use of what you already have. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and you don't have to, more importantly, it keeps the door open to revitalising that old project you mothballed a few years ago. You may find that you can use the figures that you've collected for one rule set are suitable for another rule set, or like I say, just to do the old-fashioned thing and consider rebasing figures for the new set of rules that you want. It depends how you've based them, of course, but for most people you can probably rebase them and you don't have to lose those models that you dedicated so many hours working on. So as usual, I want to throw this subject out to you. Have you ever given up on a period, and why did you do it? Was it basically you decided that the project was complete, or did you just lose interest, or were you tempted away by something completely new? And finally, what happened to that collection? Did you mothball it? Did you sell it? Give it away? And if you did, do you regret it? As always, I'd love to hear your experiences and opinions in the comments section below. Now we have time for a hobby update. Now the long Easter weekend was very busy, with plenty of trips out with the family as you'd expect, but also some time for hobby activities. So as well as compiling and editing new videos, I've been working on some base labels for my Wars of the Roses stuff. When I originally painted these, I wasn't planning on having descriptive labels visible on the bases as I've done with other projects. However, I've sort of changed my mind a little bit with that and decided that I now want to see the names of the commanders for the various units. If nothing else, it will make it easier for me to identify units when setting up, but also when filming and photographing them for battle reports. Now I'm not trying to make this into a huge side project, but I do know it's going to take several days to label every unit, because if you've seen my Wars of the Roses army, there's a lot of bases there. But it is something I'm going to be working on over the next few weeks. Now I still want to get these figures and the Test of Resolve rules into the Reject Shed of War sometime soonish. But currently the group schedule is quite full. There's lots of players want to bring their games into the shed, so I'll have to compete for a time slot. Sometime in the next week or two I'll give Stuart a call and work out when I can fit a game in so that I can at least have a definitive target in my mind to get everything ready. Maybe giving myself a deadline will make me pull my finger out and get everything done that's been taking ages up until now. So time for a channel update. Last week I mentioned a poll about the types of videos that I was asking you would like me to make, and over the last week or so I've been working on a few videos based on the feedback from that poll. The first of these came out on Friday and I have more planned for the next few weeks. I'm not sure I can keep up 2 videos a week, but I'm not complaining. I'll get done what I'm able to do, and while I'm on a roll and while you're still viewing them. So we'll see how this goes. Certainly there's a lot more battle reports that could be made out of old blog posts, because I've got a ton of pictures. I say my back catalogue of photographs of previous games and shows is in excess of 90,000 photos, so there's plenty there for me to choose from when trying to build a slideshow based battle report. And of course, one thing that I would ask is that if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon so you can keep up to date with my weekly videos as they come out. It's also worth checking out the community tab on the channel, as I plan to use this a lot more in future, putting out extra content there as well as on my blog. The channel recently powered past 3,000 subscribers, and it's still a constant source of amazement to me that so many people watch my content. So thank you to everyone who comes back time and again, and if you haven't done so before, please do drop me a line in the comments below. I read them all and I do try to respond as many as I can, schedule permitting. Now there is just under a week to go before Salute 51 next Saturday. I've been compiling my shopping list and done some planning for the inevitable show video that I'll be putting together, and I expect I will be oblivious to the world most of the day as I move from table to table in my systematic pattern, taking photos and shooting video. If you see me and I have a distant glazed expression on my face, it's just the pain meds kicking in. So please come over and say hello. Part of my enjoyment of these shows, things like Salute and other big shows like this, is just chatting to friends, new and old, and meeting subscribers to the channel. If I get home and I'm not hoarse from talking too much, then something's gone badly wrong. So linked to Salute, I'm going to do a book review, and this week's book review may be a bit controversial for some, because this week I'm not reviewing a historical novel, I'm reviewing a graphic novel. Now, a couple of weeks ago I was contacted by Colin Mathieson, who's seen my collection of Zulu war models in 6mm and the fact that I've played a solo game of the Battle of Rorke's Drift using the Men Who Would Be Kings rules. Colin contacted me to offer a copy of his special edition hardback version of his short graphic novel The Water Cart Rescue. Now, this wasn't being sent for review, but I enjoyed it so much that I decided I should mention it in this week's video. So The Water Cart Rescue is a short story based on actual events during the Battle of Rorke's Drift. It was inspired by literally a couple of sentences in the book The Washing of the Spears by Donald Morris, which mentions a group of British soldiers sallying out to recover a water cart from the abandoned half of the compound. So this event took place sometime in the early hours of the 23rd of January 1879, after a long afternoon and evening of fighting and wave after wave of Zulu attacks. It's now night time. The scene is still being illuminated by the burning hospital building, which is still ablaze, and the British perimeter has fallen back to the biscuit box wall dividing the compound in half. But in their retreat they've been forced to leave the water cart behind. It now rests in the open in an area that has been swept by successive Zulu attacks for many hours. Wounded men and thirsty soldiers, desperate to slake their thirst, can see that water cart just a few yards away and decide to rush out and bring it back in. This was just a tiny part of this large battle, but Colin Mathieson has brought this moment to life with his graphic novel. Now, in this special edition there are also several extra pages of historical information, including a short history of the battle by Anglo-Zulu war historian Ian Knight and photographs taken by the author. There's also an additional short graphic story at the end illustrating the aftermath and how it affected men on both sides, going beyond the heroic tale told in the film Zulu and putting a human face on this particular moment in the conflict. All in all, this is a fascinating and unique look at this iconic battle and those that took part in it. Now, if you want to check out more from Colin, he'll be at Salute next Saturday, so do pop over and check out his stand. It's TE05. It'll be next to War Bases and opposite Perry Miniatures, I believe. And also check out his blog, Moments of Adventure. I'll put a link in the description box below. There's also a really interesting interview with Colin on the Redcoat History channel here on YouTube, in which he talks about the origin of the story and its development into this full colour hardback special edition. And again, I'll put a link to that video in the comments box below, in the description box below. So that's it for this week. Please join the conversation in the comments below as always, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And as I said earlier, if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.